I'm very much an open book. My Zooms are quite informal, in as much as I'm one of you guys. I am a single parent. I've got a 10-year-old son. And so I know what this is like when I talk about these things. I've been there, I've experienced them. The only difference being is that this is what I do for a job. I had quite extensive training, and I am a coach is what I do. So that's the only difference. That's why I'm doing this Zoom. But you guys come with a wealth of experience as well. And I really encourage you to share that and help each other on these things. So if you've got something to add or share or question, go for it. You can also ask in the chat. I should be able to see that as well. It's just not quite so easy for me to monitor the chat at the same time. So we shall get started. Now the question is, it did work. Brilliant technology. So if you haven't met me before, like I said, if you maybe are new to Frollo or you haven't been on a Zoom or one of mine before, I'm Colleen Emily. People always wonder whether Emily is my middle name or my first name. Lots of people on here call me Emily. That's fine too. Emily is my middle name, but it kind of seems interchangeable on Frollo. Lots of people call me Colleen Emily or Emily, anything goes. And like I said, I've been a single mum for about just over 9 years now. So I guess I'm a veteran single parent. And yeah, it's been tough. It was tough in the beginning. You have to adjust to maybe making new friends. Your original network kind of sometimes disappears overnight. You have to adapt to kind of a new way of doing things, a new situation. But what I've learned over the last 9 years is that there is a tremendous amount of positives of being a single parent that I wouldn't change for anything now, and completely am in love with the relationship and the partnership that I have with my son. That just the team that we have is amazing, and I wouldn't have that if I wasn't a single parent. So there's definitely positives as well. And as I said, a little bit of my background, my first degree is in neuroscience. So I do know how your brain works. Nobody get worried. And I'm currently studying for my master's in the psychology of mental health and wellbeing. So that's kind of academics. And then I am a qualified coach. I did 2 years of training and an NLP practitioner. So this is one of my favorite workshops to teach because it brings in all of that, and it's something that's really relevant and really helpful. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I didn't really get taught about different emotions or how to respond to them or understand them, or really know kind of how to navigate difficult ones. And I think a lot of us are in that situation. So being able to do this workshop and help kind of fill in some of those gaps is, I'm really passionate about that. And I really want to help other people be able to do that. So that's kind of what this one is about. And I really hope you find it enlightening and helpful, and you can take a little bit away from it with you. I do like to start my sessions by saying that if at any point anything that I'm talking about is difficult, I don't know your personal situations, but if you find anything triggering or you're finding it overwhelming at any point, and that's not ever my intention, but if you do feel like that, feel free to take yourself off of the Zoom, mute me, whatever you need to do. If you want to, trying to just look around the room, ground yourself, see things that you can see, things that you can smell, taste, touch, hear, all of those kinds of things. Any kind of grounding technique you can do to help yourself is great. And also, if aside from this session, if you are struggling, there is a lot of places you can go to talk to people free of charge. So things like the Samaritans, there's Shout, there's Mind, there's quite a few. I think Frollo has a blog that lists them out, or certainly when new members join, you can easily get that information. If anyone needs that information and they want it anonymously, just send me a message or post through the way you can be anonymous on Frollo, and somebody will help you out. So that was just to caveat that one. Oh, no, that was the one I want. Okay, so emotional awareness and emotional literacy can sometimes sound like really fancy words for meaning pretty much the same thing. And it's just literally what it says on the tin, being aware of your emotional state and what kind of emotion you're experiencing, and being able to kind of discern between different emotions. So it's almost like you become your own dictionary about how you feel and how you interpret those feelings and what they mean to you and what they mean for you. And this is kind of a fingerprint, because not any single one of us is going to experience the same emotion in the same way. And that's really, really important, because we kind of get this idea that, you know, everyone feels sad the same way and the same kind of things make them sad, and the same with happiness. And that's not really the case. So, sorry, if you can mute yourself if you just joined, because I can't do it in this, that'd be great. So emotional awareness and emotional literacy is the same thing. And like I said, it's being able to understand that your emotions and how you experience them are going to be very unique to you. And there's something amazing in that as well, that you get to be the expert on you. And being able to go on that personal growth journey, I think is amazing. It can be scary, but it's something completely brilliant that you get to do. Now, emotional regulation is where we are able to have a little bit more conscious control over the emotions we experience, how we experience them, and how we express them. So how we communicate those emotions to others, and how we manage those emotions internally. That's what emotional regulation is. So they both go hand in hand, and they're both really, two parts of the puzzle that getting our heads around is really good. So this is what this is all about, is working through those things in a way that's fun. Like, hopefully in my sessions, if you've been to them before, I'm heavy on the info, but I try and make them fun. So let's see how we go on. So we're going to go through 4 steps. I'm a big fan of steps. You might have been to some of my other Zooms. I have 5 steps to things. There's only 4 this time, so that's good. So less writing in your notepad. So I'm going to be taking you through each of these. Feel free to screenshot this. This is a graphic that I put together, but feel free to screenshot it. It's absolutely fine, just to remind yourself. So we're going to be working through each of these in turn. And we'll go through different exercises to help you do that, to build up your toolbox as to how you put these things into practice and action them, so that you can go away from this not only having a wealth of information around this, but also knowing what to do with it. So that's what we're going to do. See, sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so the first step is leaning into the feelings, which sounds a bit woo, but really and truly it is just being open to. Often we, when we're experiencing something that we don't want to experience, that, you know, we maybe feel guilt around, or shame, or sadness, or any of the kind of negative emotions, we ruminate on them and we churn them around, and they're so ever present because we're holding on so tight to them. And if we're able to just let go a little bit and sit with those things and work with them, actually that letting go and that openness, my cat, can help you bring a little bit more awareness and be a bit more playful around your feelings. If we are so like I said, adamant about trying to work through them and holding on to them quite so tightly, there's no room for them to move. There's really nowhere to go. It feels quite linear. So these are techniques to help you get a little bit more familiar with them, spend a bit more time with them, and take a little bit less, letting go of the reins a bit more. I don't know if any of you have ever gone horse riding or into horse riding. It's something I'm really passionate about. I love Western riding. You'll know that if you pull on the reins and you pull on the horse's mouth and you're pulling that bit in their mouth, they're really difficult to control. They don't like it. You don't get where you want to go. It generally doesn't build a very good bond with you and your horse. Whereas if you're able to loosen the reins a little bit and be a bit more subtle in your communications, obviously sometimes if they're being naughty, you can't do that. You build a much stronger bond with your horse, and they will do the things that you're asking them to do, and emotions are the same. If we can kind of loosen those reins a little bit, loosen that grip, we get a much stronger bond with ourselves, much better awareness about what we're experiencing, and the steps after this become a lot easier. So I want to share with you 5 techniques that can help you do this, that you can kind of trial. Not all of them are going to work for everyone. So it's about trying and seeing which ones work for you and which ones you like. These are just ones that I've used with, I use in my clients. So I wanted to share with you. The first one is checking in with yourself. And this is a really quick one. You can do it any time of day, doesn't really matter. It is simply just sitting and asking yourself how you're doing today. How am I feeling? Asking yourself those questions. And I know some of you are probably sitting there cringing, thinking, well, I would never ask myself a question as though I was a separate person. But simply just doing that starts building that self-awareness. So how do I feel today? If you want to, you can score it out of 5. If you're the kind of person that likes to just jot a few things down or sit with your morning coffee or tea and just think it over. Like, how do I feel today? Is it 2 out of 5? Am I feeling a bit low today? Is it kind of 4 out of 5? I'm quite energetic. Or it could be that you don't want to score, but you just want to check in and sort of familiarize yourself with it. Kez, I don't know, I can't mute you. Do you mind if you just mute yourself? Because I can't do it from this end. Thanks. So first checking with yourself. The other one is to sit with the feeling. And again, this might make you feel a bit cringy. This again might make you feel a bit like, oh, I've never done that before. That seems a bit strange. And it might sound counterintuitive. 2 seconds. Okay, I've done it. Cool. So it might sound counterintuitive to sit with a feeling, particularly if it's one that you don't enjoy, that you don't like, that you don't want to be sitting with. But like I said, if you kind of allow it that room and allow yourself to kind of just be with it, it has less of a hold. And again, if this is too difficult for you, if whatever you're experiencing is complex and difficult, we're talking about surface level things here, like, happy, sad, frustrated, maybe a little bit angry, those kinds of things. If it's a really complex thing, I don't invite you to just sit with it and wallow. We're definitely talking surface level feelings here. The next one is to journal. So this can go tandem with your checking in, but journaling is really just writing. It can just be writing what you feel in the moment. It doesn't have to be like particularly formal or follow a pattern or anything in particular. It can just be, how am I feeling today? It could be a mind map, it could be bullet points, it could be any way that you kind of start building that awareness. If you're a visual person, this is going to be good for you. If you're more a kinesthetic, so a feeling person, actually the next one, meditation, is going to probably work better for you. If you're not sure whether so when I talk about auditory, visual, kinesthetic, they're the main ones. It's how you process, how you take in information from the world around you, how you internally process it in your brain, and how you interact with the world externally as well. We all use all of them, but we all have a preference. So when I talk about that, that's what I'm referring to. So if you are more of a feelings person, a kinesthetic person, you will really enjoy meditation. There is tons of free meditation apps and ways of meditating. I particularly like Calm and Headspace. I've also used Bright Spark and Buddhify, so I'm pretty familiar with different ones if you want to ever pick my brain on them. You don't need an app either, you can just do it yourself. But mindfulness meditation, where you are getting used to the idea of feelings coming and going and not attaching to them, but just letting them literally come and go as if clouds were moving past you in a sky. And it's a skill. It is for sure a skill, and some days I can do it and some days I cannot. But again, it's allowing you to kind of start getting used to those feelings and not attaching so deeply with them, to the point of not being able to actually work through them or getting away with them. And then explore naming the feeling, which is the next step. So hopefully you can see that and it's big enough. You might not be able to see the words, but don't worry. The next thing to do is to name your feelings. And again, this may sound really basic, but if you look at the center, this is a feelings wheel. And this one was designed originally by Gloria Wilcox. There's others as well, which you can Google. There's Plutchik's wheel, which is more like a flower shape, and it looks at how the emotions cross over to create new emotions, a bit like a color wheel would do in art. And then you've also got the Geneva wheel of emotions, which again is a slightly different format. I prefer this one because it is more comprehensive. It has more emotions on. We actually, as human beings, experience 34,000 emotions. That's how many emotions we have. And clearly this wheel doesn't have all of them, but it has 130, which is quite a few. So I prefer to use this one. And I think it quite nicely visualizes, represents how we go from our 7 core emotions, which are the ones in the center, and how they get slightly more subtle and nuanced the further out you go. So the 7 in the middle are probably the ones we're most familiar with. And when I said it's quite basic, if you start going and looking at some of the ones around the outside, probably be a little bit less familiar with how you experience those. So you're probably quite sure of when you're happy. You're probably quite sure when you're sad, surprised, angry. The familiarity you have with those 7 core emotions is probably there for most of us. But as we move out to the next layer, it starts to get a little bit harder to be sure that that's what we're experiencing or that's what we're feeling. So when you name your feelings, having a tool like this, having this available to you somewhere, whether it's printed out on your phone, wherever it might be, and you can buy them as like fancy things as well if you want to, or you can laminate it, I guess. Having it there to just kind of refer to start building that emotional literacy, start building that emotional vocabulary is really, really useful. So just as an exercise, just to have a think about it, on the second wheel, so not the center core 7 core emotions, but the next wheel out, just pick one of them, one that stands out to you, one at random, whatever you think. And we're going to just think about what that feels like, or what that, sorry, it's just letting people in. What do you experience when you feel that? So it could be a number of different things, and we're going to And the next couple of steps, we're going to take that and work with that, and I'm going to give you some more tools as to how to do that. So I just want you to pick one at the moment at random and start mulling it over, start thinking it over, and see how you get on. If you're not sure about that, pick one of the ones in the center. So if you find this tool helpful, I've got a pack of these basically. So if you need me to send it to you, or I can send you links, so you can just Google them and find them. So this is a Wilcox feeling wheel. The other ones I mentioned was a Plutchik's wheel and a Geneva wheel. You can Google them and print them off. They are free tools. Okay, so moving on to step 3, and it's about taking your emotions a level deeper. And again, if you're finding this kind of difficult and it's stirring up things in you that you don't particularly want to deal with right now, please excuse yourself. If you need to and you're familiar with them, do some grounding techniques. It's absolutely fine. And if you need further support, I mentioned at the beginning places that you can go to get that for free, and that you can just call if you need to talk to somebody. So taking your emotions a level deeper. When we start getting really clear about how we experience those 7 core emotions, which I've put there for you. So when you start understanding kind of when you experience them, why you experiencing them, what happened just before you had those feelings, being able to kind of articulate and communicate those things. I mean, doing all of this work, this kind of personal growth work, helps you create better boundaries with yourself, with people around you. It helps your communication, it helps your relationships, it helps you be able to share with your kids how to work with emotions and manage emotions and build that emotional literacy. So this is something that isn't just, about this session and about this workshop. This is stuff that's going to help across all things: your work, your parenting, your relationships. Being able to internally and externally familiarize ourselves with these things and communicate them is such a huge thing that we can do, such a great tool. So spending the time to do it is, really, really good. So when we start understanding these core emotions, we can take it to the next level. So the one that I said, pick out one at random, or pick one that seems familiar to you. You may have struggled a little bit more to know when you experience those things and how you're experiencing them. So this might look like you might feel like something that happened yesterday made you happy. And then if I said, okay, what was it about that made you happy? What other words would you use to describe that? What other emotions and feelings would you use to describe that? And sometimes it's really tough. It can be really tough to not just label everything as happy or everything as angry if it falls into that bucket. So stretching that and stretching your literacy to look at the next level down. So examples that I've given here is happy might actually be more accurately described as playful, or angry might more accurately be described as let down, and surprised might be more shocked, for example, or bad could be that actually it's disappointment. So it's being able to start looking at those in a different way. And again, it's not in a, I must get this right. It's all about trial and error and exploring, because like I said at the beginning, emotions are a fingerprint. How you experience something and how you feel something is not going to be the same as it is for somebody else. And so that's why being able to understand these things for ourselves and build that self-awareness to a point that we're able to communicate how we're feeling to somebody else is so, so vital and so important. And it's why I'm so passionate about this side of my work, because I think it just allows you to relax a bit more in some of the relationships that you have, whether they're friendships, romantic relationships, even your parenting relationships, relationship with yourself. It is literally the pinnacle of all of these things, and it helps with so much, which is why I just get so heated about talking about it. So just checking my notes, I don't want to miss anything. Often we can, particularly if we have quite loose boundaries, or we haven't really set very many personal boundaries, we can feel an array of emotions, and we can feel a lot of feelings, and we know that something isn't right, something doesn't feel right, but we can't always put our finger on why. And it can be really, it can be quite isolating sometimes, and it can be quite difficult to feel that way and not be able to understand the reasons we're feeling that. And so being able to do this and taking this a level deeper, so sort of taking it outwards from the center of that wheel and really starting to look at the subtleties and the nuances about how we're feeling, can start to help us understand whether a situation we're in or something that we've maybe agreed to, that we get that feeling that, you know, we wish we hadn't. We can start understanding those feelings before we kind of allow boundaries to be crossed, or we do something we don't want to, or we get an opportunity and we're not sure if it's the right thing. Being able to understand those feelings at the time and work with them to know whether a decision is supportive of who we are and what we want to be doing, or whether it's not, is where this is going to really help you. So I really encourage you to kind of play with this a bit and work with one or other of the wheels to see how that works for you. And it's as simple as, you know, after this meetup, or tomorrow, or looking back at something that happened today and just thinking, how did I feel in that moment? Like, what was I experiencing? And then picking one of these 7 and then looking at the next level down and thinking, well, how can I more accurately describe that? And it can be really hard because we don't often attribute feelings or emotions to things we do. And sometimes as single parents, we can be either so busy and so full on that we don't have a chance to even like sit down and drink hot coffee, to sometimes being not with our kids and it being, you know, a slower pace and almost having to kind of fill the time. And so this kind of rushing and slowing down and rushing and slowing down sometimes doesn't create the optimum conditions to actually ask ourselves how we're feeling, and doing that check-in and looking at how we're feeling and asking ourselves those questions. So if you can, spend a bit of time, like a couple of minutes, and just see where you go with it. Okay, so step 4 is, again, taking it the next level down. So when we look at those 7 core emotions, being able to bridge that with physical sensations. And this is where neurolinguistic programming, NLP, works really neatly, because we use something called submodalities, which is purely just physical feelings that we can attribute to how we're feeling or what we're experiencing. And it can be really enlightening to bring in these physical sensations. It can make it really interesting and really help us, like I said, tune into that kind of gut feeling and know whether something's serving us or not supporting us. And there's a lot of research, well, there has been a lot of research, there's even more going on, particularly in the field of psychology, about this mind-body connection and about how our physical sensations are much more closely linked to emotions than we thought. And there's a lot of evidence about this multiple brain theory. For example, there's a similar network in your heart. So you've got neurons in your brain, and they find similar patterns of networks in your heart and also in your gut. So there's this idea that there is this brain-body connection. So we can tap into this and use this by looking at the primary feelings and thinking about where in your body you feel this. And so if you want to, and again, no pressure at all. I can't see you, by the way, so I can't see what you're doing and nobody else can see you. But if you want to take just a couple of moments, if you feel comfortable to, just closing your eyes. And first off, just taking a couple of deep breaths. Because I've been talking really fast, so let's just take a couple of deep breaths. And I'd like you just to think about happiness, just the feeling of happy. And where you feel that in your body, where you feel this most. So when I first said happiness and happy, you might have got like something somewhere in your physical body. It might have been your stomach, like butterflies. It could have been in your feet, energy. It could have been in your throat. Sometimes people describe feelings in their hands. It can literally be anywhere. And this is why it's so personal to you. So just intuitively think where in your body you feel that. And then kind of think, what does that look like if I was to describe that to somebody else? What kind of size is it? Does it have a color? Does it have a pattern, a texture? And then you can start thinking about whether it has a sound. Might not do. And this is how we work with submodalities in NLP. And this is a very basic form of it, but we can use it for a lot of different things. So it could be to work with fears and phobias. It could be working with emotions and understanding situations, working through challenges, building self-awareness. I mean, it's just limitless, really. But I wanted you to just get a taste of it so that you can start understanding this idea of bridging. So just, if you haven't already done so, just again, taking a couple of deep breaths and opening your eyes if you haven't done so. This was just a really quick introduction to how to start mapping across with these physical sensations and how kind of fun it can be. And another way to do this is to start thinking about the behaviors that you do. And again, a lot of these aren't conscious. So things like clenched jaws, tapping fingers. I know that when I'm really nervous or anxious, I rub my collarbone. And I become aware that I do that. I know that I do that. Some people, it has changed in temperature, being more talkative, making jokes. Again, the list is huge, but starting to become aware of what you do when you're feeling certain things. And again, this is going to build your emotional literacy. And all of these things are going to help with your emotional regulation, because you'll be able to start attributing certain behaviors to how you're feeling. And if you're able to do that, then you're in a much stronger position to be able to communicate to somebody else how you're feeling, because you know how you're feeling. And that's often, and like I said in the beginning, I certainly wasn't taught these things, and certainly not in this way, of how to experience emotion and what to do with it and how to manage it. And of course, that's a much bigger conversation. And we're talking here about very top level things, not complex experiences. But all of this is going to help build that picture so that the emotional regulation becomes more is much easier, and it becomes much more in conscious control rather than something that just happens and you kind of have to look at it in hindsight. So it's, again, just building that self-awareness and building that picture for you. Like I said, it's different for everybody. Okay, so I always do whistle stop tours. Oh, let's let another person in. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, starting this process, it's not a race. It's not about, okay, I've done that now and now I know exactly what I'm doing. It's a practice. It's something you have to kind of work on, almost forever, which sounds a really long time, and I know it is, what I mean by that is, it's not a tick box. It's not a job that's ever done. It's not something that, you've come along and you've heard what I had to say, and now you're like, okay, yeah, I know how to do that now. It's about working with these things all the time, because as you grow and as you experience new things, how you experience emotion and how you are able to regulate is going to really depend on the experience that you have and what you're experiencing at the time. So because these things are constantly in flux, it's something that we need to, revisit and practice and work with. And that's, at the point of a couple of minutes a day. And the more you do it, the easier it will become. And like I said, it will become much more conscious control and take a lot less effort. But the bonus to you is that it will help you not only be able to manage your feelings, so know whether something's worth you really having to hold on to and, feel in a difficult emotional position for longer than you need to, whether it's something you can kind of let go, and you can allow yourself to just sit with and then let it go, as you would do in mindfulness. And again, we're talking isolated feelings, not complex things or really, really traumatic things. I certainly wouldn't be asking you to just sit with them and let them go if that were the case. We're very much talking just, simple, isolated experience, feelings and emotions. And then when you can start checking with yourself, building that emotional literacy, and getting a familiarity with those 7 core emotions, those 7 central emotions, you can start bridging them with feelings, where you feel them in your body, and start creating that roadmap. And if it helps, start using those submodalities, start asking yourself those same kind of questions that I was asking you. Now, if this is something completely new to you, and what I've just talked about is complete, gibberish as far as you're concerned, it feels a bit out there and a bit woo. I get it. I hear you. I understand. If it's not for you, it's not for you, and that's okay. If it's something that you're thinking, do you know what, I really need support with this, and I've listened to you, but I'm still not entirely sure where to start, or my experiences are a bit more complex and I don't really know how they layer up, how they work with each other, please ask me questions. Please reach out. I'm absolutely here to support the Brolo community. And if I can help in any way, I will do. So please do ask. So I promised you there was things to take action, and hopefully you've taken some notes or taken some screenshots, and so you've got a bit more of an idea of the steps that you can take. But use the tools from step 1. So that is leaning into the feelings. So those steps, if you weren't here at the beginning, this is recorded and it will be on YouTube. But those steps or tools to start building the awareness and leaning into your feelings are things like sitting with the feeling, which I talked about, journaling, meditation, and naming the feeling. So if you need me to, I can go back. You can just ask. That's your step 1. And then start using tools like the feelings wheel, like the one I shared here, to start building that emotional vocabulary and your emotional literacy. Play around with it, make it fun. It is not, this is not supposed to be a chore or something difficult. It's supposed to be quite playful and quite fun in a way of you building that self-awareness. And then if you feel like you want to and start challenging yourself, take that to the next layer out and do the same process with that, and start bridging it with sensations and feelings and just see where you get to. So I've built in time. I know I talk really fast, but I've built in some time just if you do have any questions that you want to ask me, if you want me to go back to any slides that you missed, that you want to screenshot, or you want me to go over anything, if you wanted to have a look at some of the other feelings wheels and tools, now's your chance. Yeah, Deborah. So it's not necessarily intuitive, and it does take practice. It does come with practice. And I very much put you all on the spot by asking you to do that. I wouldn't necessarily, if I was doing that in a session with a client, do it quite so impromptu and spontaneously, and kind of ask you to jump into that practice without any kind of prep. So do not worry that you couldn't answer that. It's very, very common. And it certainly does come with practice and kind of building that intuition. But it also might not be, it might be, sorry, that you are not particularly a kinesthetic sort of person. But there's certainly other ways that you can start bridging those feelings and sensations. So if you are an auditory person, it might be that when you listen to particular music, it evokes emotions in you. So that's another way to kind of start bridging two different things and building that awareness. It is useful to be able to build in an awareness of your physical body with things, but it may be that for you, you're not there yet. And for a lot of people, you're not there yet. It's taking the steps and taking the practice. So start with step 1 and step 2, and just do that. Just do steps 1 and 2. Don't worry about taking it to the emotions to the next layer down of the wheel, and don't worry so much about the bridging with physical sensation yet. Just simply work on steps 1 and 2 until you get really familiar and really comfortable with that, for asking yourself those questions and checking in. And then you can kind of move to that at a later date when you feel ready to. I hope that answers your question, Deborah. Dan says, where's a good place to get a feelings wheel? Will you be putting links up for us to follow? Yes, I'm very happy to send the one that I've created to anyone who would like it. I've got one that has a blank space on the outside for you to write in your own physical sensations, and I've got another one that you can colour in yourself if you're a particularly mindful colouring person. If you'd like that, send me a message on Frollo, or I'm going to share my contact details on the next slide so you can ask me there. Otherwise, just Google feelings wheel or emotions wheel and you'll get lots of pictures. The one that I showed you is the Wilcox feeling wheel. The ones I mentioned was Plutchik's, which is Pluchik, Plutchik's wheel, and the Geneva wheel. So you can Google those, and there's lots of nice pictures of them. I can show you some in a second. But to bear with me, this computer is new to me, doesn't work. Hazel says, how often would you tend to apply this during an average day, or do you only do this when you're feeling overwhelmed? Great question. I would do it every day. But in the beginning, if this is something completely new to you, then just, maybe just dip into it a few times a week and see how you get on and build up practice. It can be quite a lot to take in if you start doing it every day. But I would do it every day. I certainly check in with myself on a daily basis. And I would do it not just when you're feeling overwhelmed. In fact, I would encourage you to do it when you are not necessarily feeling overwhelmed, because in that moment, overwhelm is kind of a cacophony of lots and lots of emotions and lots of feelings, of which we all experience it in different ways. But overwhelmed is like an umbrella term of feeling several emotions all at once. So actually being able to do it when you're experiencing overwhelm would be kind of jumping in at the deep end. So I'd really encourage you to do it when you're kind of experiencing the more positive emotions, so that you can build up the practice and build up the awareness. And then, then you can start maybe unpicking things like overwhelm. But that would be certainly a very challenging place to start. Hopefully that answers your question. So here is where you can find me. I'm on Instagram at I am Colleen Emily, and that's Colleen with 2 L's and 2 E's. You can email me. So I'm fully aware that asking questions on Zoom takes confidence, and it might not be something you want to share with everyone. So if you want to ask me a question but you don't want to ask it on here, email me I reply to every single person that emails me. I'm very happy to share what I know. Yeah, and that's it really. So screenshot that if you want to get hold of me.